Welcome back to the Wealth Builder podcast. I'm your host, Nick Donato, financial advisor at Guidance Financial. Whether it's your first property or your 15th, buying a property comes with a long list of things to consider: location, property type, finance, and plenty more. In most cases, you want to make sure that every box is ticked and double checked because making a mistake on some details can lead to potential headaches down the road. That's why today we're talking about the ultimate property purchase checklist, a practical guide to help you approach your next property purchase with confidence. We'll be covering it step by step, and you can download it via the link in the episode description or over on our Instagram page. So let's jump in. So today, again, I'm joined by Mel Dennis from Domain & Co., a buyer's agent, chatting through this property purchase checklist because, Mel, I'm sure you've purchased many a house before.
Just a couple, Nick, just a couple. Thanks for having me on board.
No worries. Thank you. So we've broken this checklist up into stages, going from pre-purchase, property selection, due diligence, and then offer negotiation and contract, what to look out for.
We can add on the end of that actually, Nick, your pre-settlement inspection.
And your pre-settlement inspection as well. So pre-purchase, what do we have to think about?
Well, you've really got to think about what your objectives are in buying a property. And that's going to be different whether it's an investment purchase or an own home purchase, right? It's going to be different if you're downsizing to if you're upsizing. So it's really about understanding your non-negotiables, your location, your type of property that you're after, and also where you come in, budget.
Budget, definitely. So having all of those, location, property fundamentals, all of those types of things is definitely a starting point. But before we look at location, it's understanding our financials, chatting to a mortgage broker to understand your borrowing power and your capacity. And then along with your objectives of what we're purchasing the house for, it's making sure that we're purchasing this property through the right structure. Whether it's personal because we're going to live in it, or whether it's through a trust or a company or a self-managed super fund. That's, I guess.
And understanding the different costs around that too, right? So if you're buying an investment property and you're going to buy it in your trust, your land tax is going to be higher. Just understanding those simple things. A lot of people don't realize that it has other repercussions on it.
100%. And the other lovely thing we get living in Melbourne is the stamp duty costs as well, which when I bought my first home, it was a lovely bill that I got hit with. So planning for all of the costs was stamp duty, your conveyancer costs as well. So when you do purchase a property, there's more than just the purchase price, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we go through all of that with our clients too, understanding, this is what you've been told you can borrow, but do you have another 40, 50 grand for stamps?
Stamps and the like.
And
And in terms of the structure, alluding back to the intro, if we don't get that structure right at the outset, that's where we really get into headaches around, if we want to change structures that it's owned in, we're going to cop stamp duty twice. We might cop capital gains tax. So maybe it's not even viable to change structure once you've already purchased it and we're a couple of years down the track. So getting your objectives clearly defined, probably step one in terms of structure, and then setting up the structures or having the structures already there. Personal ownership is definitely we want that right.
Yeah. Also buying the property, Nick. We were going through an owner's properties and their titles because they were unsure of their investment portfolio, the exact name the title was held in. And some were in like a tenants in common, and some were in joint proprietors. And that can make a difference for you down the track as well. So knowing the difference between those and being clear with your legal team on what name and how to structure the title is important.
100%. And then it comes to those non-negotiables, as you said, chatting to your partner if you're buying it with a partner, or coming them up with yourself. And again, this is more non-negotiables probably from a living point of view if we're buying somewhere to live,
Mhm.
thinking about location, thinking about this. I've got some young kids, so the schools in the area, the public transport that's easy to get to. Thinking of the types, whether I want a backyard and buy a full blown house, whether it's a townhouse or an apartment that we're happy with.
Do I have
Um,
do I have girls? Do I need more bathrooms than one? Am
am I going to
I
be able to
planning to
get
have
in?
kids? Like all of that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So come up with a list of those non-negotiables, forecasting into the future with the kids, whether it is a boy or a girl, who
Hmm.
knows?
Hmm.
And going from there. So yeah, pre-purchase objectives, financials, and then non-negotiables. Um, is there any common traps that you see people enter in the pre-purchase or we may as well call it the searching phase of things?
Yeah, I suppose there's a few different things that we look out for. Location, I guess fundamentals are neighbours. What do other neighbours like? And you can often tell that just by looking at a yard, right?
Hmm.
Are they the type of neighbours that you want to have as neighbours? If you can meet them, even better before you buy a property. Back streets aren't always back streets. They might be cut through streets. And so they'll have a higher traffic content going through the streets at school times or at home times where people are trying to avoid a more main road. So it's good to visit the property or know, what are the cut through streets. Directional, south doesn't have as much sun in Melbourne, north is better facing in Melbourne. So, how much light do you want coming into your home and how much light do you want into the backyard and how big is your backyard? So if you
Hmm.
don't have any space that's facing any sun, are you going to be able to dry your clothes outside or are you happy to put them in a dryer every day? So,
Yeah.
it's all those sort of things that we're looking at. And also the size for your family's growth. You don't want to buy something that you're going to be outsized of in the next couple of years because buying property is for the long-term future. It's not for a couple of years unless you're planning to then use it as an investment property or something along those kind of that vein. But you just want to think about all of those things.
Hmm. I'm sure if it's got a north-facing backyard with lots of sunlight, it'll be underlined in the real estate agent spiel about it because
Usually.
it's it
And if
seems
it's
like
not north, they won't mention it.
100%. But that's some good tips there around, yeah, really getting an understanding of the property when you find one.
Yeah, well, you've also got to think about the property fundamentals as well. So easements that may affect your plans for the block down the track. You might think that you can build a shed on the back, but you can't because there's an easement running through. Flood and bushfire zones are going to add to your insurance premiums. And depending on the area that you're living in, you might be happy with a bushfire zone. I certainly live in a bushfire zone and I love the area that I live in. And I do hope that we never have a bushfire where I am, but I'm aware that that is adding to my insurance premiums and I'm going into the property with my eyes wide open.
Hmm.
The build quality is something really that people really need to have a look into. And that's a good segue into falling in love with new. New and shiny doesn't stay shiny for long if it's not a very good build quality.
Hmm. Hmm. But then
And
when with the old or older, the one thing that I've seen people get hit with is they buy it with the idea that one day we will maybe knock it and rebuild it or make the front look nice and pretty and renovate. And then they come to the realization that they didn't know there was a heritage overlay on the
Correct.
property.
That's definitely one that you want to watch out for if you plan to do some major works.
Hmm.
And a heritage overlay isn't always bad. It is protecting the area and it's protecting the property from somebody turning it into something that it shouldn't be and doesn't match the area. But it's again going into the property with your eyes wide open and knowing what you can and can't do from the start and not finding it out as a surprise down the track.
Hmm.
Understanding owners' corporation costs is a big one too. Like if there is 2 on the block versus 20 or more, 100 on the block, the owners' corporation is going to be very different. 2 on the block, you might not have a professional owners' corporation manager, but you might have a shared driveway. So you must have common insurance on that driveway for public liability. But you might choose to also insure the buildings together so you get a better deal and you can just split the costs. But it's just knowing what those owners' corporation costs involved. So it is usually in an apartment building is going to be your insurance and your maintenance. And that's
Hmm.
your weekly maintenance, your bins out, your garden maintenance, but also the bigger maintenance of outside painting and outside gutter cleaning and windows and things like that is all incorporated into those owners' corporation costs that you're going to pay on a house anyway.
100%. And I guess a lot of this that we've just spoken about around the building and the easements and heritage overlay is all around the due diligence that you'd have to complete once you have ticked off on your pre-purchase items and searched and found the place.
Mhm.
Um, and then before you put in any bids or take any further steps, it's to check this from a due diligence point of view, making sure that you know everything that you'll be up for, and you'll know what the property's all about, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So getting out there and having a physical look at the property is a big one. In our last episode that we recorded, Mel, you mentioned that there was you can employ people to do the building checks and the pest checks and all
Yep.
those types of checks. And in one instance, you mentioned there was a missing firewall that was going to set people back 15-20K. So make sure we do those to.
Absolutely. And the building inspector will crawl under the house if they can get under there and see if there's, it might be too damp under there. So there might be some drainage issues. Ours sends up a drone on the roof so we can see if there's any roofing issues, if there's tiles broken or sheets not in place properly or gutters that need changing or attending to. And again, it's not a reason necessarily to say no to buying a home, but it's knowing what you've got to fix in the short to longer term once you move in.
Hmm. It's just, yeah, again, not going in blind and knowing what there is. Maybe it's still the perfect property for you and
Mm.
location for the kids with all the bathrooms for the girls. But
Mhm.
yeah, just knowing what you're getting yourself into rather than ripping up the tiles and then seeing mold. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but
That's right.
it has.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Another due diligence we do is we do have our contracts reviewed by a conveyancer or solicitor. And so our clients maybe come to us with their own conveyancer solicitor already in hand, or we can certainly recommend one so that we will look over the contracts and identify anything if it's a definite no. But the last step is always to make sure that it is reviewed by a conveyancer or solicitor prior to putting any offers or bidding at auction.
Yep, yep. And I guess that builds into the next checklist items that we have around offer and negotiation and purchasing the property if we get that far.
Absolutely.
Um, so I guess in terms of the contract, the few things to tick off on or make sure you're across is the conditions of the contracts and the key dates involved.
Exactly. So if you're negotiating with any owner, the settlement period could be different. They may have the property already empty, so they're keen to settle as soon as possible. 30, 60 days would be considered as soon as possible. Or they may be living there and not purchased another home yet, so they want a longer settlement, 120 days. You might be wanting to develop the block and knock the house down that's there, so you want a 6 months settlement. You've really got to know what the owner's wanting. And this all forms part of the negotiation too, right? So if You come to them with a lower offer, but exactly what they need for their settlement, you might still be able to buy the house, even though someone's come with a higher offer, but won't match their settlement terms. So it's really important to find out what that is for the vendor. And if you need something different, asking, particularly if it's at auction, don't just bid thinking you're going to get it, because you won't. You will get what they've advertised at the auction unless it has been approved by the auctioneer or sales agent prior to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
A couple of
100.
other things you probably want to be aware of is your cooling off period. So, and I'm talking about property law in Victoria, of course. There is a 3-day cooling off period for buyers once you sign a contract, but not at auction. So there's no conditions if you bid at an auction. The auction conditions also last 3 days either side of an auction. So if you negotiate purchase on the Wednesday before the auction on the Saturday, you are under auction conditions. So you can't put any conditions in. You can't put subject to finance, subject to building pest. There is no cooling off. Once you've purchased it, you've purchased it. And that includes 3 days the other side of the auction. If the auction's passed in and hasn't sold, you go back to negotiate a purchase Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're still under those auction conditions of no no conditions.
So make sure you know all of your conditions. There's a bit of info on your cooling off periods. And even before we get to the offer and the negotiations, entering an auction, definitely have a conversation with whoever you're going to the auction with and have a cut-off
Your plan.
limit.
Yeah,
Have a plan.
definitely. Well, they've come to see you, Nick, already, so they know what their budget is, hopefully. And that's really important too, because if you don't have your finance approved and you go and bid at auction, and you've bought the property, you've bought the property. So you better find the finance.
Mm-hmm. And have, even before you get to buying it, I guess a checklist item that we've got here is to define your cutoff limit or your upper limit, so we don't go over that, so we don't put ourselves into financial stress or have to find another 10 grand. Have a limit that if they go $1,000 over, we're done, so to
Yeah,
speak.
absolutely. And the other key thing too, Nick, is the 10% deposit.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a first home buyer in Melbourne, Victoria, you want to do a 5% deposit, that's fine, but just make that clearly known to the sale agent that you're a first home buyer and you've been approved for that. If you want to pay less than 5% on the auction day or on sale day, again, you'll need to get that approved, because otherwise they will be expecting it once you've signed the contract and that hammer falls down.
Mm-hmm. And make sure your bank will allow you to transfer
That's
a
right. That's a
large
key
amount
one.
as well.
A lot of
So,
the agents now are actually doing direct debit. So they'll go into the purchaser's bank account and pull the deposit out, but not all agents do that. So it's definitely a good one to make sure you can do.
yeah, just ensure that facility. Otherwise, it'll probably create some unwanted stress. So, checking your bank accounts, making sure it's available, making sure your limits, there's not no limits, but the limits are increased, at least for the Saturday auction that you go and hopefully get your next house for, is increased. Um, so yeah, having a negotiation plan or an auction strategy as well, have a bit of an idea of what we're gonna do there. And then in terms of the post-settlement inspection, so hypothetically, we've been successful.
Yeah,
We've
you
we've
want to
got
go and do a pre-settlement inspection, and a lot of people. I was just talking to a sale agent. We helped sell a property on to ask them if the purchaser has booked their pre-settlement inspection, and the answer was, well, we spoke about it, but they haven't got back to me to do it, and it's settling tomorrow. So, they haven't made sure the property is as they purchased it, and that's something as a buyer's advocate we will always do with our client or on behalf of our client, to make sure the property is as we purchased it. So quite often it won't be cleaned, the gardens won't be mowed, weeds will be growing out of the gutter if it's been a vacant property, and we didn't buy it in that condition. So we do expect those things to be rectified prior to settlement. We'll check that the appliances are working, the taps are all running, that it is generally in the condition that we purchased it.
And this is a bit off the checklist, but if there is something wrong with the property, do we delay settlement? How does that work?
That's up to the conveyancers and solicitors. We feed the information back to them. So we tell the agent these are the problems and we take photos. We then detail that and send it to the conveyancer for our client and say these are the issues that we see that need to be fixed before settlement. Most people are good and fix them. It's really up to the conveyancers how much of an argument they want to have. They either delay settlement or they don't pay the full amount. They might hold back $5,000 if that's what we think it's going to be to fix the items that need fixing.
Yep, love it. So
But we do leave that up to the conveyancers to deal with from that point.
we'll let the legal people
Exactly.
deal with that and fight it
Exactly.
out if there needs to be a fight. Hopefully not. Hopefully it all goes through
I know.
smoothly and
Most of them do.
your pre-settlement check is all done. Um, and then again, outside of the checklist around the pre-purchase property selection, due diligence, offer negotiation side of things, just in general from a checklist item, do you, as you've bought again many a property through your career and the one you're living in today probably as well, do you have any tips for any other additional checklist tips for
I
people?
think a big one, Nick, would just be to get advice, like to have a chat with a buyer's agent, whether you're going to employ them or not. I think to have a chat with someone who has the knowledge can really help set you on the right path. So everyone buying a property should talk to a buyer's advocate who is knowledgeable about what they're doing, not someone who's not, to get the tips and the inside knowledge, because you never know what little 1%ers they might give you. Whether, as I said, whether you use us or not, I'm more than happy to chat with anyone about what their goals are and seeing if we can add any value to have them having a good property experience.
Hmm. So go through the checklist and then at the end, even with all the information that's accessible, ChatGPT everywhere involved. It might not always
That's
give you
always
the
correct.
right, it might not always be correct, so double check it. But having a chat to a professional can help in your potentially help in your situation
Absolutely.
to give you a bit more lived, experienced, first-hand knowledge.
Exactly.
No worries. Thanks for that. And the checklist is available for everyone to have a look at. It's got everything that we've chatted about today. Tick them off as you go. If you need any help, again, Mel at Domain and Co. If you want a buyer's agent to help you out, they're definitely helped again many a client, and we did do an episode a couple of weeks ago if you are wondering what buyers agents actually do. um but yeah, thanks for coming, Mel.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I really appreciate it.
No worries. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Again, thanks, Mel, and thanks to everyone for listening along as well. If you like today's episode, feel free to drop us a message or share it with someone you know who might find our conversation valuable. If you are in the market to purchase a property, reach out to Domain and Co. Or if you have any other questions, financial questions, feel free to visit the guidance website and you can book in an initial meeting. But I look forward to bringing you your next episode in a fortnight's time. Until then, have a great day.